Let me welcome Stacey Abrams back to the Madison Show. Thank you so much for taking the time. Let me get right to it. Fair Fight 2020. What's the mission?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me back. We are working to set up voter protection teams in 20 battleground states because we want to win our country back in 2020. We know that voter suppression is real, that it has been the mission of the GOP over the last 20 years to eviscerate voting rights, to limit how many people access that right to vote. And we know that the only way to push back is to ensure that we have voter protection teams that are on the ground, that are fully funded, and that are in place long before we have a nominee for president.
Was this a lesson learned from your gubernatorial campaign?
It certainly was amplified by the gubernatorial campaign, but I've been working on voter protection work since I was in college. We know that it's baked into the DNA of America that voter suppression is part of how we keep new voices from entering the conversation or how we keep existing voices from being heard. That the progress we need to see in our country only happens when we have legislative victories, and some of the grandest experiments in America that have been successful came from new people coming to the table and being a part of our narrative. But in 2018, what we learned, having run a campaign against a candidate who was the umpire, the guy at bat, and the scorekeeper, Brian Kemp served as Secretary of State, and for almost a decade prior to that election, he had systematically disenfranchised voters and used almost every lever of voter suppression to limit who would have a voice. We nearly beat him, but we know voter suppression is incredibly compelling, and it is effective, and so they're going to keep protecting it.
Well, Stacey Abrams, who is with us, is building a national voter protection program for 2020. Let's talk about cost. How much? What do you think it will cost to have this program going in 20 states?
We know it'll cost us $5 million. What we have done is we are actually going to fully fund 4 staffers, a voter protection director, a deputy director, a hotline manager, and someone essentially who can help organize volunteers and make sure that that voter protection is spread across the states. That across 20 states is basically $250,000. So across 20 states, that's $5 million. If we raise more, we can do more, but we know that the baseline is not waiting until September 2020 to recognize that there will be voter suppression. We want to tackle it in September of 2019 so that we're standing up these organizations, we're hiring staff, we're training them, and we're deploying them in every one of these states to make certain that no matter where you live in these 20 states, that we understand what voter suppression looks like where you are, and we're ready to fight back.
How will you raise the money?
I am traveling the country, and I am talking to folks like yourself who have incredible audiences who want to be invested and involved. This is something that can be done by raising large dollars, but it's also getting folks to send in $10, $20. This is our democracy we're talking about. And while my name is not going to be on the ballot, my values are, our values are. And so we need people to go to fairfight2020.org and contribute. We appreciate any level of support because it adds up. We've seen that play out across campaigns in the last few years where candidates come out of the blue and raise 20, 30, 50 million. We're not trying to do that. I mean, it would be lovely if it happened. But what we are trying to do is to say no matter who the nominee is, the voters are what we care about, and that's why we are protecting voters in these states.
Now, you mentioned your name won't be on the ballot, but that leads to another issue that has come up, and that is, you might be asked to be a vice presidential candidate. I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up. So I anticipate a political answer, but I'll go ahead and let you answer it.
No, it's not a political answer. It's a truth answer.
All right, give me a truth answer.
The reality is I'm not running for president, and and I do not know who the nominee will be.
Right.
That nominee will then have to decide who he or she wants to have as their colleague and their ally in this campaign. That is left to the decision of the candidate, and I can't say who that person is, and I can't say I'm the person they would choose. If the question is, would I like the job, I'm not going to be coy and say no. Of course, I would love that opportunity, but I can't plan my life around possibly being someone else's choice. My responsibility is to do what I can, when I can, and where I can, And what I can do is fairfight2020.org, making certain that no matter who that nominee is and no matter who their running mate is,
Right.
that I've done the work necessary to ensure that they can achieve a victory that protects us all.
Yeah, understand. In other words, my grandfather used to say, put it where the goats can get it. Just break it down. In other words,
Yeah.
it's an old country term. In
I'm
other
from
words,
Mississippi. I understood.
That's where my folks are from, Clarksdale. So you understood. In other words, you're not waiting around, and you can't afford to wait around. The decision will be whatever it is. But in the meantime, we've got to get people registered to vote, and we've got to protect their votes. That's in essence what I hear you saying.
Exactly. What we have to understand is that voter suppression takes on three roles. One, it's making it hard for people to register and stay registered. So those are the voting purges. But it's also the law they passed in Tennessee and that exists in Florida and in Texas that makes it hard for third-party organizations to register voters. The reason they did that is because they know that third-party registration is twice as likely to help people of color and poor people get registered to vote. And so they've made it criminal to try to do that work. They've done similar things in Wisconsin. We know that it's about staying on the rolls, and that's Ohio and Georgia and the 17 million people who've been purged from the rolls in the last few years by Republican secretaries of state, by state legislatures who've made it easier and easier to strip people of their democratic rights. So that's number one. Can you get on the rolls and stay on the rolls? Number two, can you cast a ballot? We have thousands of people who try to use early voting only to find out that the polling place where they need to go has been moved or they've shut them down. We have people who apply for absentee ballots that they never receive. We have folks who do their best to just go to their regular precinct on Election Day only to find out that that precinct has been shut down and the closest one is miles away and they don't have a car. So can you cast a ballot? And then the third is, can your ballot get counted, otherwise known as Florida? When you cast a vote, will they count your ballot? Will your absentee ballot be thrown out? Will you be given a provisional ballot that basically is worthless if you can't come back within 3 days and prove that you are who you say you are? And a lot of people can't get off of work a second time to do what shouldn't have taken that long the first time. And so we want to look at the whole spectrum. Can you get on the rolls and stay on the rolls? Can you cast your ballot, and can it be counted? That's what voter suppression looks like. And the last thing I'll say is the reason it's so insidious, and to your point about breaking it down and making it plain, they make us think it's our fault. They try to make you think it's user error. Well, you should have done this or you should have done that. You shouldn't have to work this hard to be a citizen. In most industrialized countries, the ease with which you can cast your ballot is remarkable. But in America, because we are so diverse, because that diversity is terrifying to some, they've put obstacles and hurdles in the way. But the best way to overcome voter suppression and foreign interference and insecurity is to overwhelm the system. And that's what we almost accomplished in Georgia. People would like to say that because we had record turnout that there couldn't possibly be voter suppression. That's like saying because a lot of people get in the water, there can't be sharks. Of course there are sharks. Our job, though, is to overwhelm the system by showing up. We're going to do our part by protecting the vote, but we need voters to do their part by showing up and saying that our voices will be heard.
And you also, as I close out, and again, I appreciate this time with us, Stacey Abrams, let me make sure I'm clear on this. You can use volunteers, it sounds like, from all walks of life, having done voter registration for the NAACP as their political director. You're going to need attorneys, volunteers, managers, and financial support. So finally, if people want to participate with Fair Fight 2020, can you give us that information, and we'll make sure it gets on our social media platforms?
Thank you so much. They need to go to fairfight2020.org. You can sign up. You will get alerts. We'll tell you what's happening in your state. We would love your financial support, but as Mr. Madison has pointed out, all support is welcome. Your time, your talent, and your treasure. We need all of the above, but any of the three we would appreciate. And that's fairfight2020.org.
Okay. And do you believe that do you think that the DNC, I don't know if they're doing this or not. I think the last time I talked to Chairman Perez, he said they had a 50-state strategy. Do you know if that is still the case, and do you support that approach?
Yes. So the 50-state strategy is that the goal of the DNC is to make certain there are organizers in all 50 states. What we're focusing on is that the most, what I would say, the most fundamental hurdle to anyone actually being able to cast their vote, and that's voter suppression. We are there to protect the vote. We are doing this in cooperation with state political parties, in cooperation with the DNC, but we are a standalone mission because you've got a lot of great organizations that want to do this work, but we need to get in there early, we need to be embedded, and we need to know each state's needs, and that's what fairfight2020.org is doing.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll talk again. I really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Stacey Abrams, the founder of Fair Fight 2020, of course, as you know, the former U.S. gubernatorial candidate in Georgia. So please go check out the website. And, again, I always ask, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, she and her group and supporters have stepped up. They've got a mission. They've got an organization. Now, and if you're looking for an organization to work with or contribute to, here you go. So it's fairfight2020.org. So check it out.